Hey Ken, this is Greg again. It is Tuesday, April 5th, the year 2022, and I've got chapters 29, 30, 31, and 32 to cover today. I'm not expecting this one to be really long. They were interesting chapters, but nothing real necessarily deep or anything. Chapter 29, again, the story is progressing towards the resolution of two things: the Yelnats family curse and the curse there at Green Lake. And Stanley is now, he's able to start putting a few things together. One of the things in this particular chapter, early in the morning before it gets hazy, he is able to see the mountain, God's thumb, on the horizon. It's just for a few minutes, and then it's gone. I guess it's kind of like watching Mercury, being able to see Mercury through a telescope. In very few times you can actually see Mercury. When I was in college, about 10, 12 years ago, I took an astronomy class, which was most people's favorite class. It was, I wouldn't say it was an easy A, but I got an A out of it. But they had a small planetarium there at the local university, and we were actually able to get to see Mercury. It was just one of the 2 days out of the year that you could see it, maybe, and we were able to see. We were able to see it traverse across the face of the sun. But Stanley, as parts of the story are coming together for Stanley, especially about the part about kissing Kate Barlow, and that's coming together, and he's now thinking about his great-grandfather who was robbed by kissing Kate Barlow, and the apparent non-cognitive responses by his great-grandfather once he was rescued. All he said is, he found refuge on God's thumb. And so Stanley is now, as he's looking out the mountain, he's starting to wonder, is that where my great-grandfather went? And we know the answer. Of course it is. But again, the author is just piecing things together, just working the elements of these plots and subplots together to form a cohesive unit. And so that was the main thing there in chapter 29. Chapter 30, which I seem to have the most notes about today. Chapter 30, the boys are starting to are expressing some issues with Zero digging part of Stanley's hole every day. And they're offended by it. I tried to put myself in their shoes, and I would probably be offended by it as well. Poor Stanley, very few social skills. I mean, he was an overweight boy. He got made fun of, and I wouldn't necessarily call him a sissy, but he didn't use his bigness. He didn't put it to work, and other small people kind of dominated him, kind of ruled over him, and Stanley was pretty much to himself. He was kind of an outcast, kind of a loner, and I'm sure he just didn't think the thing through. I mean, he had to consider, who am I here with? I'm here with these boys that all have nicknames that I don't even know half of their real names, and I've got one of them, a little boy, who's digging half of my hole all day, or whatever percentage it was. And I'm sure the thought never crossed his mind, I wonder if this upsets the rest of the boys. Well, it did. And it ended up being almost a physical fight between, who was it, Zigzag? I'm not really sure. I think it was Zigzag and Stanley. And Mr. Pendansky shows up, and he makes the matter worse. Come on, caveman, fight back. Come on, Stanley, fight back. And Stanley doesn't fight back, and it creates some issues. And finally, coming to as Stanley was kind of getting his face beat in, Zero came to his rescue, came to Stanley's rescue, his defense in the fight, and he put his arms around Zigzag, and he started choking him to the point where Mr. Pendansky pulled out his gun and shot into the air, to signal to the other adults, the other counselors and the warden herself. And this is really the beginning of the end for Zero as far as the camp is concerned. The warden came out. She heard she was told what was going on, that Zero was digging part of Stanley's hole, and she wasn't amused by this. No one's digging anybody else's hole. But then she made it even worse. They started making, Mr. Pendanski especially started making fun of Zero. And this part, Mr. Pendanski's relationship to Zero, always kind of has amazed me every time I've read this book. Of course, Mr. Pendanski's not a real counselor anyway, but I'm thinking about the students that I've had over the years and those that I've taught. And Mr. Pendanski I don't think I've ever made fun in this way of anybody based upon their level of intelligence, in a class. I just don't think there's any room for it. Now, I make fun of kids all the time, and they make fun of me as well. It's a mutual understanding that if they do something stupid in class, and I don't mean that just they're stupid, but they make a mistake, a silly mistake, they say something backwards, whatever. It goes on my list of things that I keep on bringing up, and as long as I still find humor in them, I keep on, bringing it up, and the kids get involved too, and they've got things that I say and do that they replay to me often. But in this respect, how Mr. Pendanski is just totally disrespectful of Zero, and calls him, there's nothing between, Zero, there's nothing in there. That is really kind of an amazement to me. Why? And of course, Mr. Sir or the warden, they're not going to stop him. I mean, none of these adults like these kids. They're just using these kids, as we know. But they really have no care or no genuine concern for them. Even though Mr. Pendanski, he gets them unhuddled. What are you going to do with your life? I mean, he doesn't get straight answers. He doesn't get real answers. Something that I tell new teachers, every year because I'm second oldest teacher here now, and I try to get, especially the ones that are in my wing, I try to get them aside, and I try to, help them learn the ropes and things that they should be looking out for. But one of the things I always tell them is this: students instinctively, they know what teachers like them and what teachers don't. You don't have to tell them; it's obvious. And sometimes, most of the times when kids complain to me about other teachers, I shut them down fairly quickly. But I listen to them as well until I shut them down. And some of the things that the teachers do, I understand why the kids don't like them. Mainly because they don't think the teachers like them. And, Mr. Pendanski is not a person like that. He makes fun of Zero. Well, Zero, he makes a statement. He says, "I'm not digging another hole." And no one figured out what he was talking about. They just thought he was talking about digging Stanley's hole. And that's not what he was talking about at all. He meant he is not digging one more hole. His or anybody else, he's finished. He's finished with this place. And, they didn't know what he meant. They were too big. Sometimes I do that in class too. I get going on things and kids trying to tell me something, and I kind of jump the gun, and I don't figure it out until later. But they didn't figure it out until Stanley just took off and left. Kind of a humorous scene, and when we watched the movie in class after reading this is one of my kids' favorite parts, where Zero hits Mr. Pendanski in the face with a shovel. It always gets a big "ooh" out of the crowd. But and you want to cheer for him because Mr. Pendanski has really been a jerk to Zero. Again, doesn't care about him. Never took the time to figure out what the issues are in Zero's life. And then Zero took off running out into the desert all by himself. Chapter 31, just got a couple points here. Stanley finds himself in a dilemma. He wants to save Zero. And he's thinking to himself, well, maybe if I go tell the warden where I really found that tube, if she'll promise not to punish Zero, then I'll tell her. But then I admire his little critical thinking here. He says, if I do that, though, X-Ray is going to get in trouble because X-Ray claimed the tube. and he got the day off, and it's not going to be a secret to anybody who spilled the beans. So that's a dilemma for Stanley as well. The first dilemma, but then at the end of this chapter, it's a very concerning part. The warden decides that they just are going to erase Hector Zeroni from life. They're going to hack into the computer system, the state computer system, and erase him as much as they can. No record that he was there at Camp Green Lake. The name Hector Zeroni is not going to turn up. And Stanley overheard this, and he obviously understood at this point. Zero is either already dead, or they're going to make sure that he does not survive. The last chapter, chapter 32, a new kid shows up, and he's the replacement for Zero, in the bunkhouse, dorm, whatever it is, the tent. And his name is Twitch, because he hand twitched when he got around cars, even though he's a young man. And he was able to hotwire cars and steal cars and stuff like that. And that's why he ended there. Then another favorite part of my kids is when Stanley jumped in Mr. Sir's truck, the camp truck, and took off. He was going to go looking for Hector. He figured the only way to make sure Hector, if he's still alive, he gets back, is he's probably not going to be able to walk. He's probably crawling out on the desert floor right now. But he steals the truck, and like a pinhead he is, he drives immediately into a hole, wrecks the truck, and doesn't even take the time, even though he had time to do this, he doesn't even take the time to fill his canteen up with water. So he's going out into the desert, lake bed without his canteen full of water. Once again, we are progressing. We're moving forward in the plot of this story to get, of course, the resolution in stories is always at or near right before the end. And so we are nearing that. There's still a lot to work out. Stanley finding Hector, them going to the mountain, finding the onions in the water and eating the onions, and coming back to camp and digging up the treasure chest, and then the resolution with the counselors and the warden as well. And then of course we got Stanley's father and his discovery in his for the stinky shoes as well. So anyway, again, we're just cruising toward all the resolutions of this story. There's 50 chapters. We've now finished 32, so it'll take us about another 5 lessons here in order to get everything finished. So see you tomorrow. You have a good rest of the day, Ken. See you.